Cordes says that learning errors as important errors show how students are building their how interlanguage, which is their personal system of English during language learning. Lado says errors come from L1. Corder says errors also come from internal language. Creation focus on input. Corder focus on learner productions. Jokins talk about innate rules. Corder students real errors made by the students.
Stephen Krashen's monitor model explains that language learning happens in two ways: subconscious acquisition and conscious learning. Acquisition comes from meaningful, comprehensible input, while learning involves grammar rules. The monitor acts like an editor, applying those rules only when conditions are right. Krashen stresses that real progress depends on rich input and a low anxiety environment, making communication more important than memorization.
Now going to explain about Cordell errors analysis. Cordell focused on learning errors because he believed errors show real learning. For him, mistakes reveal the learning's internal process, and they help teachers design better materials and assessments. In compared with the Krashen's monitor model, this theory focuses on comprehensible input, not on errors. Krashen says the students learn naturally when they understand the messages they receive. In his views, errors are simple normal in natural acquisition. Teaching should be based mainly on conversation. So, while Calder used errors as evidence of learning, Krashen emphasized input on the key to acquire a language. Hello everyone, today I'm going to explain in a simple way that universal grammar by Chomsky is and how it's compared to other three theories. According to Chomsky, we all born with the native ability to learn any language. In our brain there is a device called the latch, which contains universal principles shared by all languages. This means that language develops naturally. We don't need explicit rules because most knowledge is implicit and already built into our mind. His main focus is understanding these universal structures that every human brain shares. When I compare this the other theories, I see clear difference. With creation, language is not innate; it's acquired through comprehensible inputs. For him, the most important thing is to say message. We can understand, and rules only serve as support. In core theory, the learns and error are the key. He says we learn through trial and error because mistakes show how the internal learning process is processing. On the other hand, Lado explained that learning depends on the learning first language by comparing L1 and L2. We can identify what will be easy or difficult, and in this case, explicit rules are used for teachings. In summary, just can focus on what is innate and universal in the human mind, while the other three theories focus on how we actually learn through input, errors, or language difference. Thank you.
I'm going to talk about Stephen Krashen's monitor model and how it compares to three other influential theories in language learning. Krashen's theory focuses on the difference between acquisition and learning. Acquisition is subconscious and happens when learners are exposed to meaningful, comprehensible input. Learning, on the other hand, is conscious and involves knowing grammar rules. The monitor is a mental editor that uses learned rules to correct language output, but only when the learner has time, focus, and knowledge. Now let's compare this with the other models. Corder's error analysis sees learner mistakes not as failures, but as signs of progress. Errors show how learners are building their own internal grammar, unlike Krashen's, who tries to minimize errors through input. Corder encourages analyzing them to understand the learning process. Lado's constructive analysis is more behaviorist. It compares the learner's first language with the second language to predict where errors might happen, while Krashen emphasizes natural input. Lado focuses on preventing interference through constructive drills and explicit teaching. Finally, Chomsky Universal Grammar takes a very different approach. He believes that humans are born with an innate ability to learn language. Input activates this internal grammar system. Kreshek also values input, but he sees it as something external that drives acquisition, not something that triggers innate structures. In summary, Kreshek's monitor model highlights the importance of comprehensive input and the condition for using learned grammar. It contrasts with Coder's focus on errors, Lado's emphasis on L1 interference, and Chomsky's belief in universal inborn grammar.
Contrastive analysis created by Robert Lado is a theory that compares a learning first language L1 with the second language L2. And here are the main points of this theory. It's focused on comparison like L1 and L2. It says the learning problem happening when L1 and L2 are different. It explains error has interference from the first language. Teachers should identify difficult areas by looking at the difference. And contrasted analysis versus correction monitor models. Correction focus on input and low anxiety, and not on comparative language. And contrasted analysis use L1 and L2 difference to predict error. Correction believe errors are natural. Lado says errors come from L1 interference. And contrasted analysis versus Cordero error analysis. Cordero says error help you see learning progress, not just interference. Contrasted analysis predict error before the happening. Cordero study error after the happening. And finally, contrasted analysis versus Joskin universal grammar. Joskin say language ability is not. Contrasted analysis say learning is based on habitat from L1. Chomsky focus on international rules, while Lado focus on a structural difference between language.